Mark, it's great to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us this morning. I want to get to the why, but first I'm going to start with the how, because the satellite industry has been very fragmented. Analysts have been saying it was ripe for consolidation for a number of years. We've seen a few attempts. Inmarsat has certainly been seen as a key piece of the consolidation puzzle, but up until now, nothing had come together. So how did this deal come to fruition?
Well, I think you've got both companies looking at a very fragmented market. It's a very fast-growing market, and there's just very clear synergies between the two of us. And so, it takes two to make a deal. And so I think it's really important to note that Inmarsat, which is owned by a consortium of private equity investors, is taking something like 75–80% of their consideration here in shares in the new company. And so that's indicative that not only do we see it as a really good deal, but they do as well.
Yeah. So what does this deal actually enable? And I ask that because space-based broadband service is rapidly and wildly becoming a more competitive landscape, thanks to SpaceX and Amazon and OneWeb and so many others.
Yeah, well, we estimate it as a $1.6 trillion market opportunity, and so that warrants a lot of investment. One of the cool things about the mobility market is it's a natural satellite market, very difficult to serve purely by terrestrial means, and actually what we think is it's difficult to serve by only a single constellation approach in satellite. You want multiple orbits, you want the ability to integrate terrestrial and space together, and this brings together the assets to do that. So we like this business. We've been quite successful in it. We've been able to change the perception, for instance, in-flight connectivity on what people can do. Airlines like it. It's a really exciting market. This is a very unique combination to be able to serve that market.
Yeah, you've tended to have satellites at higher geostationary orbits. When you talk about multiple orbits, I think about Inmarsat under CEO Rajiv Suri. He has been hiring executives. He's made comments suggesting that maybe he would launch a new network that was comprised of similar technology to, for example, a SpaceX Starlink. Are you going to actually make a direct play on low Earth orbit?
No, we see low Earth orbit as a good way to augment the demands. And one of the bandwidth demands, one of the most important things about, say, the commercial in-flight market is just looking at where airplanes are. And what happens is the hardest part is serving those places where hundreds of airplanes come together at a single time. So it's like serving a small city when all those things come together. That's a place where geosynchronous is very, very strong. You may want to use terrestrial or LEO to augment that for things like low latency, as an example, which can be desirable as well. So we'll be able to use multiple things. We're talking to other LEO operators who we may augment our service with, or we have our own filings, and we may use LEOs to augment. But I don't think you're going to see us do a pure play LEO. That wouldn't. We think we can compete really well with the assets that we have, augment it a little bit.
So how much does it cost, especially as these two companies combine and presumably get the green light from regulators by the middle of next year? How much is it going to cost to build and launch your future satellites? How many of them will you put into these various orbits? And I ask that because we have seen these new technologies, and I wonder how you're implementing them and what that means for economics.
Okay, so the main thing you want in technologies are to get a lot more bandwidth per capital dollar invested, and the other one is to be able to put that bandwidth in the places where there's demand. So that's what they call beamforming. That is kind of one of the most important technologies in terrestrial 5G. It's one of the most important ones in space. So, for instance, with we have a constellation called Viasat 3 that will start launching first half of next year. Each of those individual satellites are a terabit per second. We'll have global coverage with those. That's already baked into our capital spending plan. Inmarsat has its own capital spending plan. So that this next 2 or 3 years is kind of the peak of capital spending. After that, it will level off, be less capital intense. There'll be substantial synergies. But the main thing we say is, hey, look, what do you get in terms of bandwidth? Where do you put it for how much capital investment? That's where we think we really shine.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.